Well, good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Christchurch Cathedral this evening. Thank you for braving the elements to be here. We did hop from one foot to the other, deciding whether we'd go ahead or not. We contacted all the artists, presenters this evening, and they all kind of gave us a thumbs up. So we thought, great, we'll do it. And I was saying to Catherine that I imagine many of those who would have been with us this evening are actually watching us online. So a hi to everyone watching us online this evening. Great to have you with us as well. Cathedral Chats is a series, and we see part of our role here at the Cathedral as hosting conversations on issues that are relevant to us as a people. Our next Cathedral Chat is going to be, Monica, on May the 7th. It's on AI and humanity, and our guest speaker will be Michael Riley. Mon, you've got a sign-up sheet at the back of the church for any who are interested, is that right? Okay. So washrooms, it's a bit of a rabbit warren here, so what I might suggest is make your way to the back of the building and then turn right, and I'm hoping Michael Fitzpatrick will be somewhere at the back of the building to steer you down the stairs and then around to where the washrooms are. As you may have already discovered, refreshments are available throughout this evening. Please just feel free to help yourselves whenever you need tea, coffee, hot chocolate, or something to eat. I'm going to now say a territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we gather today on the lands occupied by the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations at the time of the creation of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. We honour and respect these nations and commit ourselves to walk together gently upon this land. Kerry, I would want you to convey our thanks to the community engagement team. Your team is the one sponsoring us, or sponsoring this presentation this evening. A lot of work has gone into it, I know that, and I just want you to extend our thanks to your team for all that they've done to host us as well as they have this evening. So I think we're going to move now to introductions, so let me start with Jesse Golem. Jesse, you're an entrepreneur and a professional writer, photographer, pianist and activist. I think some of your photos are on display at the back of the church. Catherine was asking, I think we may be seeing some of them on the screen while you present as well. In 2018, you used your skills in photography to produce a photo series called Humans of Basic Income, and that amplified their stories as recipients of the prematurely, and yes it was prematurely, cancelled Basic Income pilot project in Ontario. Now I understand that your photos have been exhibited not only across Canada, but around the world. So congratulations, and I mean, as can be the case, you are multi-talented. You're also a classic pianist. So just a delight to have you with us here this evening. John, I know John from the cafe where you volunteer, John Terpstra. Since the emergence of your first collection in 1982, I think, John, you've gained recognition as a poet of great precision, compassion and attentiveness. You have a fascination for geology, family, heritage, community and faith, and you have trained your eye variously on your neighbourhood, your Dutch background, and the joys and peculiarities of marriage and parenting, as well as issues of environmental degradation, local economy, security, society, and questions of hope. It's a lot. It is a lot, yeah. And sitting at the back, we have Tom Wilson. Tom, wonderful to have you with us. You are a Canadian musician, songwriter, famed storyteller, and visual artist. Your recently published memoir, Beautiful Scars, has become a national bestseller. And in the memoir, Tom, you reveal the impact of discovering your Indigenous heritage. You're a Juno Award winner, and you're known for your work with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings and Lee Harvey Osmond. So can I just say how delighted we are to have all three of you here this evening, and look forward to hearing how your various arts, impact your engagement with the community. So our moderator this evening is the Reverend Monica Roma Green, Assistant Curate, soon to be Associate Priest here at Christ Church Cathedral. Mon, thank you for all you've done to set this evening up for us as well.
Thank you so much. If I could have our panelists come and join me.
What?
Which chair do I take?
Pick any chair that makes you comfortable.
Go right in the middle.
Hey, how are you? Whoop. Holy cow, you got us on stage and you lost half the audience. Hey, John, how you doing?
Good. How
Nice to see you guys. Yeah.
Good to see you, Tom. Thank you all so much for being here. Let me give some ground rules for everybody here. So the chat will last until about 8 o'clock p.m. At that point, we'll transition to a Q&A. And that isn't just for the folks here in the building who brave the elements, but also for those of you who are on the live stream. Feel free to put your questions in the chat where you're watching, and through the magic of technology, I will actually get those and be able to ask those on your behalf. So please feel free to do that. Thank you again so much for being here. I'm very excited to learn more about each one of you and your art, and especially how it applies to your engagement in the community and how that makes a difference. So I've got a group of questions here that have been put together by our Community Engagement Committee, and we'll go through as many of as we can. And the first question is, tell us about your growing up, like how you got to where you are now, just generally your background. Who'd like to go first?
We'll start at the far end, I think, this evening.
Let's start at the far end.
Okay, so I didn't grow up in Hamilton. I actually grew up in a small town about 2.5 hours north of here called Hanover, just south of Owen Sound, that area. My family all still lives up there, actually. I'm actually going to go see them this weekend, which should be nice. I'm a classically trained pianist. I've been playing the piano since I was 7 years old. Maybe I will play. Okay, maybe. I don't know. I keep on.
Maybe we can convince you.
But anyway, and then in terms of photography, I taught myself. Just in the year between high school and university, I took a year off to travel. I bought a camera and then just really got into it, and found that, like, you know, people would start asking me, oh, like, how much do you charge if you shoot my wedding or something? And I'm like, I don't know, how much do I charge? But then, you know, I've just really stuck with it this whole time. And I moved to Hamilton in 2011. I went on a date with somebody to Supercrawl, and I fell in love, but not with the date, with the city. And I needed to stay here, so I moved here in January of 2012, and I've been here ever since. I honestly thought I would only be here 2-3 years max, and then I would be off to the next adventure, the next town or city or wherever, but I don't know, this place has gotten a hold of me, so.
That's wonderful, Jessie. Thank you. The Supercrawl is a special thing at our heart at the Cathedral,
Yeah.
as you know. And I also have fallen in love with Hamilton. I've only been here a few years, so
Nice.
thank you so much. John, how about you?
I think Tom's the only one that's actually been born here.
Yeah.
My family arrived in Hamilton many years ago, in 1966, when I was 12 years old, and lived on the mountain, in the West Mountain, by West Mountain School, when it was the very edge of civilization. Beyond that, there were fields. And it was like in grade 10 when I got touched, so to speak, by the muse. I had to sit down in front of my dad's typewriter, portable typewriter, to finish a class assignment that was due the next day to write a poem. And I had never done anything like that before in my life. I stuck the paper in. I knew how to do that much because I had taken typing class in grade 9. It's the one class I truly enjoyed. And I put a title of a Beatles song in there, which was Happiness is a Warm Gun. And then I just typed Stream of Consciousness down to the bottom of the page. And by the time I got to the bottom of the page, then I realized three things. And one was that this kind of activity was absolutely essential to the continuation of life on the planet. and that I had to do it, and that it had nothing to do with money, which, you know, it was 1960, well, 69 or something. It was hippie time, so opting out of the capitalist system was a virtue at that time, and maybe a little easier than it would be for people these days. So, I mean, that's been the basic kind of grounding of my life ever since. My career has been in woodworking and furniture making, but the writing has been the main thing that has, you know, driven me soul-wise through the years.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Tom, I actually know your background because I watched your documentary.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. Well, why don't you, if you can synopsize for us?
Oh, I don't know. I can tell you that I grew up on the East Mountain, never in harm's way, but there was always somebody close by that was in harm's way. I've always been inspired since a kid by the characters of this city, the people that often get overlooked, but if you really have a good look at them, are absolutely fascinating and are worth volumes of and pages of writing. My next door neighbor, Ted Wren, he was a Fall Guy wrestler for CHCH TV's All-Star Wrestling.
Okay.
And he also was a severe drunk. He had a muscle car, a Super Bee, that he used to park on Brucedale Avenue in East 36th, and he would, after dinner, he would be drunk and he'd walk around the neighborhood and knock on the doors and gather the kids to go for rides in the Super Bee, and it was the 60s, and our parents let us go. So he was an interesting guy. He got beaten up by like the Sheik and Haystack Calhoun and the Love Brothers, and he didn't wear one of those little bikini type briefs. He kind of wore the one-piece leotard that with his big stomach sticking out that kind of stated, "I never want to have sex again in my life." I was watching him on CHCH All-Star Wrestling, and he jumped out before the bell went off. He jumped out of the corner of the ring and got Yukon Eric into a headlock and tried to poke his eyes out right there on TV, live TV, and he got kicked out of wrestling for the rest of his life after that incident, and then became the janitor at my public school.
Oh, wow.
And that's it's only one household on the street I grew up in, which was in the East Mountain. And the East Mountain, people moved up to the mountain. There was all kinds of little gangs in downtown. There was all kinds of conflict and violence and fighting all the time. So the parents moved up to the East Mountain where it'd be safe, where everybody continued to fight and have conflicts and form little gangs.
Wherever you go.
Wherever you go, there you are. Yes, that's right.
Exactly. Thank you. That's amazing. Wow. I love it. So all of you are very talented. You all have incredible talents. How did your talent develop from those early moments of typing, from your interest in the neighborhood and from your piano playing and teaching yourself photography? What was it that helped your talent develop into the artist you've each become?
Not giving up and capitalizing on my own ignorance and my own lack of ability and using it to move to the forefront. So
I like that.
And it's what I'm still doing today. As an example, I'm not really an artist, a painter. If I was to do a portrait of you, you're beautiful, and if I was to do a portrait of you, it would look like all the other paintings that I do. But I paint, and one of my paintings just went in the McMichael Gallery. But I'm not an artist, and I'm really a crappy musician, but I seem to have been doing this for 50 years, and I'm dyslexic, but I'm writing my second book right now. So I have no explanation except I work off of desire. And my desire to create overpowers almost everything else in my life except for my family.
I love that. That desire, that overwhelming desire to create is pushing you through any obstacles, and I love your humility too. But,
Oh.
but that is, there's a lot of imposter syndrome, I know, with a lot of artists, right? So that's really important to keep pushing through.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
Well, the persistence, I think, is
Yeah.
a key thing
Yeah.
there, because, I mean, when you're in the arts of any kind, there's often precious little encouragement for you to continue. You often don't get any or very little recognition. There's often not a lot of a support system. So if you're going to do it, you have to keep doing it on your own.
Right.
It's got to be right there within you, the desire, and also the it's got a hold of you, so it doesn't let go, so you have to keep doing it. That's and also the support of others. Like, you do get other support around you, not necessarily that they're going to pay your way or that, but community support, the support of other people that are trying to do the same thing you are. That's also extremely helpful, and to just keeping your nose to the grindstone, or just working the fields.
Got it. There's a persistence, there's a work, but also we all need that support. How about you, Jessie?
And to sort of go off from that persistence, it's also the acceptance of failure, and accepting and acknowledging that, there will be bad performances, there will be bad pictures, there will be things that don't turn out the way you want to, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm very much not a perfectionist, because if I were a perfectionist, I think I would drive myself crazy. So it is this moment of saying, this is as good as it's going to be, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing for me, I think, was also finding my own voice or niche within those arts. So it's one thing to take a photo, but then it is figuring out the kind of photos you like to take, and how you want to take them, and what do you want to be taking pictures of, or whatever it is. So the kind of music you want to be writing, or the kind of things you want to be playing. So for me, it was besides learning all of the technical things and all of the classical training and everything that I spent my whole life doing, it was also beyond that, finding my own voice in it, and finding what is it that I do, and what is my own contribution into this world.
All of these things are so important for not just the creation of art, but to consistently keep making art. And I love that. The self-expression it helps you with your identity as well as it's being expressed. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, so this is specifically about community engagement through the gift of art. So how are you each connected to your community? How would you describe your connection to your community?
When I first moved here, I didn't know anybody at all.
Yeah.
And I knew right away that I was if I'm going to survive in this city, I need to find community, and I need to build community. So I found that in the music community here. I started going by myself to open mics and open jams and different venues and places that no longer exist anymore. And then, making friends as I was going along and building those communities. And then with my portrait series, it really was my community, these are my people and my friends and my neighbors that are affected by this. I am affected by this. We're all in this together. So I really felt it felt visceral. It felt I'm fighting with these people who are my neighbors, and we're all in this together.
Yeah. So too, seeking out the friend community, but also finding the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
Fighting with.
Yeah, and there's a
and
deep reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
There's giving, and then there's supporting, and it all works together.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
So when you're in the world of poetry, then you're often writing for other poets, because those are really the only other people that are reading it. But somewhere in the late '90s, then what happened to me was Tom was saying. There you go. Yeah.
That's how it works.
Tom was saying
has
that
his
it was the characters that he's interested or that got him. And for me, it was in the '90s. The landscape of where Hamilton is came alive for me. And that's when I started doing research, peculiar kind of research, and then ended up writing a book called Falling into Place. And that one had more, it was a very unusual kind of book, but it's had more resonance over the years than probably most of the other stuff I've written until this other one came out, The Greetings from Head of the Lake, because it's I think people in Hamilton have an insatiable thirst for stuff that's about here. And I think it applies to characters that are here, but also this place somehow, the habitation, the confluence of people and the landscape. And lately I've been doing more of that. And so that level of engagement is kind of nice because you get response from people on the street, and I've been making some little chat books along the way.
Wonderful.
Like this one about, which I just happen to have with me.
There you go.
With,
I've got that.
you got that too? Okay, which is about homelessness here, which, generally speaking, when you're writing poetry, you're not writing about current events, Not usually, unless you're a spoken word artist, but not for the kind of poetry I was writing. And then with the situation of homelessness that we had here, then I wrote one thing, and one thing led to another, and by the time I had done 13 of them, I thought, oh, well, this is actually part of my job here. Yeah. This is something that I can do both as an artist and as a citizen. So, and it was a unique kind of place to find myself in, one that I quite like.
Wow, I love that your connection is both to the land and how important that is, like the landscape and how people interact with that and how important that is, particularly for people here, right? It's an unusual landscape, right? I try to explain to people who drive by on the Skyway, and they look and go, oh, poor Hamilton with all the, those steel things, and I'm like, they don't know what's behind it.
When I moved here, people in my small town were like, what are you doing? Are you crazy?
Right.
And to them I said, you know what, you're right, Hamilton's terrible, never come
Yeah, don't
here.
come back, don't come
Never
back,
come here.
don't see what's...
See,
We can keep our secrets.
I always figure that view that people get when they cross the Skyway, it just keeps the riffraff out,
Yes.
That's so wonderful. But then also to discover sort of this with the people, with the situation that we find ourselves in. I think people forget that poets actually have a major voice throughout history, actually, of making a difference in the culture, even politically, in what have you. Yeah.
It's interesting that the second book of poetry published in what was then Upper Canada was a book called Hamilton and Other Poems. And it was a book of poems that was started because someone asked this man who has only come to Hamilton to be on jury duty, and he was only here for a few weeks. Someone said to him, someone should write about the view from the top of the escarpment. And so he said, I could do that. And so he walked up to the top of the escarpment, and that's how the book starts.
Wow.
With him gazing out onto the landscape below.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of neat. So right from the very start, it was the landscape here and the interaction of people with the landscape that captured imagination.
Fascinating.
It's the beginning of Head of the Lake, too.
Yeah.
It's going up the steps, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And how about you, Tom?
I think the ability to hold up an unauthoritative mirror to our communities is an important thing. I've always believed in writing. I've always been inspired by this city and wanted to write about the people here. And if you hold up that mirror and you show what people appear as as art, it lifts up the whole community. If I go take a picture of this crowd, it's going to look like an Instagram photograph. Jesse takes a picture of this crowd. They're going to see themselves more as art, more as, bare bones art. John, the same thing. And my belief is that if we do not put poetry into what we're doing, we might as well just be writing an IKEA manual to put together some kind of crappy furniture, right? So I've been writing about this city faithfully my entire life, and it might not be as blatant as I would like it to be. I'd like it to be like John's writing. I'd like it to be spelled out, but I've found other angles to take it on. The one thing that we can learn is that we can never expect any accolades from the city that we're writing about, ever. Ever. And I'll give you my example. I was in a band in the 90s, and we had a lot of luck. Luckily, we had a lot of hits, and I was being interviewed in Germany by Rolling Stone magazine in Europe, which is not Rolling Stone magazine in North America by far. Anyway, and the guy had listened to the first record that this band of mine made, and he leaned in, he said, "Tom, will you tell me, what is the Skyway Bridge, and what is the Hamilton Escarpment? What's TH and B mean? And tell me about Burlington Street." And I was blown away that somebody had actually taken the time to listen, and in another language, mind you. But the romance of what we produce about our community, when it leaves the borders of this city, it becomes something romantic, and it becomes something that opens up people's imaginations. If we were to actually, I've listened to Cypress Avenue by Van Morrison my entire life and been completely inspired to it. I don't know what Cypress Avenue looks like. It could be an alley in Belfast for all I know. But in my mind, I have a picture of it. Anyways, Rolling Stone was interested to know what the Niagara Escarpment was about. I came back to Canada, nothing. Nobody in Hamilton cared, except for the guy who was playing guitar out in front of the Dundurn beer store, who said, "Hey, Tom, thanks for writing about Hamilton, man. That was cool." The only person.
I love it. I love it. So it's important to be like it's in many ways, and this is hard, right? Like being an artist it's the passion and the desire has to be there, because the accolades, the money, what have you, the appreciation sometimes doesn't come where you think it's going to come from. But you're right. I still think it is very important I love, how did you say that?
What did I say?
You said the unauthoritative.
The unauthoritative mirror. I'm holding up an unauthoritative mirror.
Love that.
I just made that up.
I love that. Can
Somebody
I steal
write
that?
that down.
Yes. I love that, because I think that you're right. That's exactly what it's about.
This is a great example, this book right here, that I got for Christmas, John.
Oh, yeah.
And I just opened last night because I knew that we'd be meeting. And my wife has also told me that we've met many times. But I'm such an idiot, I don't remember.
No, not many times. A couple of times.
Okay, good enough. But John, if you were to tell the story of homelessness in John's neighborhood, with just a narrative that was like from a newspaper,
right,
and that was trying to shake you and tell you something that you need to know, I would be completely turned off.
Right.
But John brings this poetry and this story to it, and completely engages me. And now I'm not only aware of his neighborhood, it's forever with me. It didn't get lost on me. I'm not trying to blow smoke all night, by the way, guys.
I'll take it either way.
Well, Tom, would you perform something for us?
Okay, well.
Your choice. Give us a little bit of your art.
Okay, well, my art in the last 11 years has been about discovering identity. I was raised for 53 years, actually it's 12 years, 53 years, thinking I was a big, puffy, sweaty Irish guy. And I met a complete stranger, and they revealed that I was actually adopted. And when I went to my first cousin, who was the only member of my family that was alive, I said to her, I found out that Mom and Dad weren't my mom and dad, Janie, and if you ever remember anything that might be able to help me, I'm trying to piece together my life now. And she turned to me and said, Tom, I don't know how to tell you this, and I'm sorry, but I'm your mother. So Janie's a Mohawk from Ganawage. My father was Mohawk from Ganawage. So that comes, I'm considered, along with my friend Joan Frame, who's here, 60 Scoop kids. So that comes with a great weight, but instead of just wearing that weight and walking around with that weight, I decided to try and turn it into poetry and into some kind of art that can translate, that maybe you'd be interested in. I got songs, I've written songs and I have them, but this is called For My Brothers. This is the first piece that I wrote for the second book that I'm writing right now, that I should be writing right now. It's called For My Brothers. Am I one of them? I come from two worlds, three if you count my dreams. I was never sure about the one I was born into, pacified in slumber and longing for the one I didn't know. I always knew that something was off, and so it goes that I ended up not in the wrong world, just another one. A different one from the one my brothers lived in, but I regularly dreamed about it, about them. I tried to feel them. I knew that they are out there in a place I could only get to in my dreams. Dreams that came in filled with chloroform and gasoline through the darkness, and dreams that took bites out of me while I lay there motionless and unable to defend myself. I was in solitary confinement, and I was missing the womb. I needed a blanket that smelt like my mother so I could calm my longing. It was, after all, a hit-and-run birth. My mother wasn't given a choice. I could feel her heart breaking as they took me from her arms, and so I had to get to that place where my memories would be safe. I was determined to find my way back to that other world, the living mystery, so I kept looking for an opening, a passage back. Maybe it's out there with them, my brothers in this dream. My brothers, those wild men, they're bigger than me, younger, solid, with bodies that have worked for decades on the high steel across Manhattan, over and under the bridges that cross the Hudson River all the way up New York State into the valley. But I asked myself, am I one of them? Are we the long riders or just acquainted with the same road somehow? I imagine us traveling together like outlaws on horseback or in cars, crisscrossing the border from America back into Canada, escaping the laws of the white man's army, the U.S. Marshals, and the deadly, heartless RCMP. Together we abandon the insanity that's pushed its way into our world. So we give ourselves up to the roads leading onto the fringes of humanity, only listening to the wild things, the animals, and the ancestors who cue us up for the next ride. Our windows rolled down, breaking the seal of silence that we created inside the car. We are Indians, and we are blood. We don't have to speak to know what one another are thinking. We just listen to the wind today and ride on. I stare out the window, holding my hand outside the speeding car into the air, watching my fingers crisscrossing the sunlight, shadowing my face and breaking out into white heat, yellow and orange, temporarily shocking my eyes and blinding me for a second before weaving back into its silent dance. And I ask myself again, am I one of them? I get to sit in the back seat now, let them drive. I'm the passenger, the older brother, the unknown member of the family. There's days you have to fight for your life, fight to stay alive just to keep your memories safe, but tonight I'll sleep with them inside this dream. We'll ride overnight, me and my brothers, to places where we can't tell the difference between good and bad, and obsession and longing. Who are the beasts and who are the gods? I guess my mother already knew that I couldn't belong to her or anybody else. I couldn't even belong to either one of these two worlds. And I ask myself, am I one of them?
Love it. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Tom.
That's new. That's not in Beautiful Stars, is it?
No, that's the first piece that I wrote for a book where the deadline was 2 years ago, and a book that I've been writing for 5 years, and now I'm closing in on it, John.
Are you?
Yeah,
Are you?
I know you guys have been worried sick about this, so
I can't wait to read it.
I remember listening to you being interviewed by Suk-Young Lee.
yeah,
And we were in Victoria at the time at my nephew's house, standing there listening to the interview, and you started telling that story
yeah,
about how you discovered that you were not Scottish and French or something like that.
French and Irish.
French and Irish.
Yeah.
But that you were Mohawk, and Mary and I are there. Like our jaws dropped to the floor, because I mean, we'd always known you by reputation and seen you on Lock Street, because we lived on Lock Street. But you know, when you said that you were Mohawk, we thought, well, that fits.
Yeah.
That fits.
Yeah, well, I have a giant head that could only come from Ganawage, and if I pull my hair back, then you know.
Well, it's everything. It's the demeanor. Yeah, that made sense. Like,
I guess so. And if you met my manager, my sister came to a show I was doing with in Ottawa, and we went out for dinner after the show. My manager, my sister, and he said, "Oh my God," he said, "You're just exactly like your sister." But that show was. They trick you on CBC, you know. It was called Definitely Not the Opera.
Yes, it was.
And it's a cute little storytelling show. And this, I had just 3 weeks before, John, I had found out from this woman that I was adopted. And I went on, and Suki and Lee said, "Okay, welcome to Definitely Not the Opera. We have Tom Wilson on the show, and today's subject is you meet a complete stranger, and they change your life." And I told that story on CBC, a family secret on CBC that I wasn't supposed to know, and I told that secret to millions. Wait a minute, CBC, hundreds of people on CBC radio, and I'm not kidding you. I had a complete meltdown, an anxiety attack after it. Yeah.
And it was on the show because she probed a little deeper, and then at one point you said, "Well, Suk-Young, I think I told you enough about my personal life at this point. I'm going to stop."
Yeah. Oh.
It was good because you didn't go any. She was probing, but at least she respected the line that you drew.
Wow.
Yeah. Good.
Drew a line,
Way to go, Suki.
Yeah, wherever you are now.
Wow, well, thank you so much for that. And I think that it's going to roll right nicely into the next question. I'm going to put two questions together. So how do you all think that your artistry impacts or educates community? Impacts or educates? And I'm going to turn to Jessie here because we haven't heard from her in a bit.
Well, specifically thinking about my portrait series, Humans of Basic Income. When I started the portrait series, way back in the day, I failed Economics 101 in university, and then all of a sudden I have these portraits that, the moment I put them on the internet, they went viral. The very first day, they were shared over 500 times on Facebook, and they were gone. So all of a sudden, I am the face of an economic issue, and I don't know anything about economics. So.
Jessie, real fast, we've got behind you. You didn't see that we put them up.
Hello.
I'm looking, Jessie.
Turn out the light so that they can be seen a little better, and then you can tell us about your.
Sure.
Oh, it's great.
Right?
Yeah, that's my friend Sarah. She's actually she's an osteopath now. She has an office at Maine and Sanford. If you ever need some osteopathy. So that's what she was using basic income for, was to fund her education. And she was working multiple jobs as a bartender while she was going to school. So then basic income enabled her to not have to, be up until 3 or 4 in the morning, working at a bar and dealing with drunk patrons, and then waking up early the next day to go to school. She was, I felt really bad for her, I forget her name, but she was fighting like a horrible like child support battle with an abusive ex, who was not paying for child support and withholding money to the detriment of her and her child. In this picture, they were pregnant. They are not pregnant anymore. In fact, the child is now 5 years old. His name is Orion. And the little girl, Julia, is now a teenager. So that's crazy to think about. That's Tim Button. I love Tim. I remember he's a very, very talkative fellow. And one time I saw him and he was talking all about this toy that he got from like the dollar store or something. And I was like, okay, whatever, Tim, I don't really care. But then he said, because of basic income, I can go home and visit my family for Christmas for the first time. So the toy was for his niece or nephew. Wow. That's Tessa. She's blind. That's her guide dog. So basic income was helping pay for medication for her guide dog. She lives in Thunder Bay. I honestly don't know if that dog is still alive or what happened to Tessa. I really don't know the end of that story. Lance, I love Lance. There's actually a great film about Lance that was made by a Hamilton filmmaker named Terry Odette. He is a lovely, lovely person. Once every couple of months, he and I get together on Lock Street and we go and we have a beer at either Beasley's or the West Town. So this person's also from Thunder Bay, and he was struggling with homelessness and addiction. And then basic income, he used the money to get into the trades. And so now he works as an electrician now, and he's off the streets. They have 4 kids. They use basic income to open the business that you see behind them, which is called Fresh Fuel. It's a health food, lunch, sandwich shop. I went in there, really, really good. It's still open, it's still operating. They're doing fine. That's Alana. She's actually doing really well. I believe she's working as an early child care educator right now. And then that's Jody and Madison. Madison has brittle bone disease. So they were using basic income because they're at the hospital a lot and hospital parking's expensive. That's what they were using it for. Wow. Yeah, I forget what his name was. But yeah, if people wanted to be anonymous, they could be. And yeah, he was going to school and used basic income to pay for school, but then with the cancellation of the pilot, he was like, how will I afford my schooling now? She was not on basic income. She's an old friend of mine named Stephanie. We've been friends for years and years. So after a while, I started finding people who weren't necessarily on the basic income pilot, but who supported basic income. Yeah. And she volunteered and drove all the way to Hamilton to be in my portrait series. This was taken in Kingston when I gave a talk about basic income there. And she worked at Queen's University in the arts faculty department. I remember we talked for hours before I took her portrait. She was struggling with anxiety and depression. She was actually really nervous about taking the portrait, but ultimately decided to do it because basic income helped her get out of her depression and helped her with her anxiety and be able to see that. So she wanted to share that story. And yeah, this woman is in Thunder Bay. When I took this portrait, she wanted to be anonymous because the father of that child doesn't know that child exists. So she's very much on her own and very much taking care of that kid on her own. That's Michael. He was a disability advocate. You can see in the picture he's wheelchair bound. He used to go to events and he would actually get out of his wheelchair and crawl up to the podium to demonstrate the barriers that people with disabilities face all the time. And in this picture, he looks good because basic income was able to get him out of poverty. His clothes are new, he has a nice haircut, he looks clean, he looks good and healthy and happy. And he's the only picture where he smiled. And I remember asking him, why is he smiling? Because everybody else was pissed off. But he seemed to just have this quiet hope that it was going to be all okay. But then when the pilot got canceled and those last payments go out, and those vulnerable people like Michael or Tim Button or Lance, like you see a physical change as they have to go back into poverty. And Michael didn't survive that change. He died. So a lot of my rage and energy for that portrait series is because I wish that Michael were here, because he would be here right now.
Oh, Jesse. Thank you. So powerful. It's so powerful, the work that you've done. And you were saying that it just went viral and you were not anticipating that at all.
No.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, what do I do now? Like, what's happening? What happens next? So life got really crazy for a while.
Yeah.
I was getting emails. I was going everywhere to finish this portrait series. And then, I thought I would just do people in Hamilton. How am I going to get to Thunder Bay? And then all of a sudden the people in Thunder Bay were contacting me and were like, hey, we'll fly you out to Thunder Bay. So I was like, okay. And then, the people in Lindsay were contacting me, being like, hey, just come out to Lindsay. We have people here. And I made friends all over the country. And even to this day, they're still friends. Now they'll be friends I'll keep till the day I die.
Yeah. And such an important cause. Such an important cause.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And did you get that kind of feedback from people that they were so grateful?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people just in the confusion and the fear of it all, you don't really know what to do. And I remember thinking I didn't know what to do either, but I was purely driven by rage, and it gave people a vehicle. It gave them something to do. Yeah. Even if it was just a camera and a cardboard and some marker and just writing out your words, it was something.
That's right. And that has that element of art being not just an expression, but a bit of healing and offering a bit of hope. And again, the education and affecting the community. These aren't just numbers, right? They're people. No. And as you were saying, like it could just be statistics, but it's not. It's your art humanizes and connects people, makes it real, makes it linger. I don't think we'll ever forget Michael either now.
No.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at our time. It's whizzing by here. I don't want to miss out on your poetry, so I'm going to just turn immediately to you and say, would you share some of your art with us? Because we've had some beautiful from your co-folks here. What would you like to share with us today, John?
I brought a couple of things. I was just thinking now, should have brought the books that they're in. I just brought pieces of paper that they're on, but they're
It's a little more like that's from
I'm so great at self-promotion. It's unbelievable. So, I brought a couple of short poems, and they're both very Hamilton-centric. And one is I wrote after Larry Deaney won the mayoral election. Some of you won't know but at that point, we all realized that Red Hill Valley Parkway was going to go through. And it was right around the time of of amalgamation as well. There were a lot of things going on at the same time. Huh. And then I was kind of pissed off about it. And then one Sunday we had this, I don't know what Sunday in the lectionary, it's Revelation 22 with the opening line, what became the opening lines of this poem, which I called The Highway That Became a Footpath. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. And I saw the holy city coming down out of heaven. And the holy raving protester who climbed into a tree to resist the building of the last highway was still in among the leaves. But the tree had grown much taller, and the protester had been living up there for such a long time, not alone, that several generations of protesters now populated the canopy, freely trafficking the branches of their swaying neighborhoods, as the 6-lane highway wound between the trunks below, as wide only as a footpath, a red dirt earthway, busy with pedestrians. And the highway that became a footpath led past the longhouse raised during the same resistance down in the valley. For it still existed. Both longhouse and valley existed still. And other longhouses, which were standing at that location several centuries earlier, had rematerialized, their hearth fires burning still, an entire village thriving beside the hallowed creek that ran through the east end of the city. And I saw the trees that formed the longhouse walls take root and continue to grow, 40,000 times 40,000, their canopy providing all the roof that the people needed. And from a privileged perch at the top of the escarpment, watching as the new city came down out of heaven, it was clear that the leaves of those trees were for the healing of the community. So that's that little poem.
Yeah, John.
It's beautiful.
It's got, I haven't read it in a while, and I realize that there's a lot of little things that happened at that time, which is, if you remember the history, that 40,000 trees they were going to plant to replace the ones that they took out in the long house that was built down there.
Wow.
Anyway, it's like I said, I've got this thing going on with the landscape around here. And I'll read one other brief
Please
poem
do.
called Giants, and this one is actually my claim to fame because it's on a plaque in San Lawrence
Yeah,
Park.
that's right.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
And it's my little love song to the landscape here. And the greatest thing in the world happened a few years ago when someone told me that they live up there and they would take their daughter, their 6-year-old daughter, for a walk around there, and their daughter had memorized.
Oh my
this
God.
poem.
Wow.
So it's really cool. So it's called Giants. There used to be giants, and they loved it here. They'd sit their giant hinds in a row along the top edge of the escarpment and pick at the loose rock with their hands or their feet, then throw or skip the smoothest stones across the bay to see who could land one on the sand strip 3 miles away. Or they'd spring themselves off the scarp top like you would off a low wall and go running all the way to the end of the sandbar, then jump across the water to the other side, or jump in, splashing and yelling up the ravines, chasing each other's echoes. This was only a few thousand years ago, and the giants were still excited about the glaciers, which were just leaving, about not having to wear their coats all the time, and what the ice and water had done, shaping and carving this gentle, wild landscape. They loved it here. I'm telling you, they absolutely loved every living minute here, and they regretted ever having to leave.
I remember reading that poem when I was at the park.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to that park
I
and find
genuinely
people.
do. Well, we are just about at the end of this portion of it before the Q&A, so I would just love to hear your final thoughts on art and community and what it can mean to all of us. Why do we need it, and how can you encourage all of us who maybe aspire to be artists or just want to support art?
Well, you have to, I learned a thing when I was in rehab, getting getting some substance and alcohol monkeys off my back, that if you don't take care of yourself first, you have nothing to offer anybody else. And the same thing for me goes with art. I live in the world that I've always wanted to live in artistically. I get to paint, I get to write, I get to do music, and I get to do them freely. There are also deadlines for all of them, mind you, but I do get to engage in all of them. And there's a complete indulgence in that. We all indulge in our arts, but we burst out of that and we're able to recognize that our communities, that this world needs us. And so we do get active. Every one of us are active. You're at Queen's Park. You're in this kitchen here working. I mean, I started a scholarship at McMaster for Indigenous kids. We have to be active. We have to just get beyond being artists, or else we're going to be wearing berets and sipping cappuccino on Queen Street West in no time at all. And I just so that's what I had to say about that. But do you know that I was thinking, you're talking about Red Hill Valley. I did the very first protest picnic for the Red Hill Valley at Albion Falls in 1979, 1980.
Oh, then.
Yeah,
Nice.
like way back. And I became aware of it. And then it kind of disappeared. And then it kind of really broke out into a giant rash of crap.
Yeah, and I was at a protest that was while it was going on, when those guys and women were up in the trees swaying around, and they had the security people below, and there was a protest on the other side, and with Sarah Harmer was there too, and my claim to fame is that I carried Sarah Harmer's guitar. That was what I got to do. But you know, as far as like part of me this is what I do. And it's actually taken me a while to realize that it's my I say job, it's my function, it's what I do, and it contributes in its own way to what other people are doing. Like I see what's going on here at Cathedral Cafe, and I think, I'm stunned by how much time and effort and love and dedication people are putting into what others would consider thankless work, but to me is crucial for, the continuation of life on the planet, if I can repeat myself. Yeah. So, and that's contributing to the kind of world that I want to live in. Yeah. And so what I would like what I write to contribute to that same effort. Wonderful. So, yeah. That's about all I got to say about that.
Well, that's great. That's an amazing thing to say about that, how you are contributing in all these ways to the world that you want to see. And you really notice that in that poem where you're talking about the new heaven coming down. Like that's the world you wanted to see.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Jessie?
It was interesting, like when the portrait series went viral and everything, and I became like tied to this movement inextricably. There were some naysayers, and a lot of the negative feedback I got was just like, well, that's not a real job, or you're a parasite, you're a leech, you're taking my hard-earned taxpayer money, blah blah blah, and I'm just like, okay, fine. If it's not a real job, then never, ever, ever listen to music ever again. Yeah. See how good your life feels. Never take all the art, photos, anything in your house, take it all down. Paint your walls white. Like, try and live in a world without art and see how well that goes. And I was even just thinking as we were talking and looking around at this building, like, consider the beauty of this space. And the art and the time and the human ingenuity and talent that went into this architecture, it's not necessary. Like this building could just be, the cathedral could just be a plain gray square building. But the fact that we have these beautiful arches and these stained glass windows and these ornate carvings it's an inspiring space. I think it's part of who we are as humans, is that we need art. We need to create. Like that is what makes us different from all the other creatures on the planet. And I think that that's a very solemn and important responsibility that we should never, ever, ever give up to any robots.
Thank you. Wonderful segue. Remember, our next Cathedral Chat is going to be on AI and humanity. Well done, Jesse.
Heyo.
Thank you so much. But thank you. So thank you all. First, let's give them a round of applause just for this part. Thank you. And now it's time for our Q&A. We are small but mighty here. And we've got, so if you have a question, please, first off, the microphone is right there in the aisle. Please, of course, be respectful. We'll get to as many questions as we can. I don't know if we're going to be like clamoring in here, but also in the chat. I've got the chat already coming through. So if you're online and you have questions, now's the time if you haven't done it before. And just be mindful in asking your questions because we only have 26 minutes before we end the event.
26.
26.
Not 27.
Not 27.
Not 24.
Not 24. 26 minutes. And so, so any questions that you might have, please, I invite you to go up to the microphone for any of our guests here. Okay, we got nobody coming here. I've got one here. Please comment on the Hamilton Supercrawl annual September event and its significance in the Hamilton arts community. So as you know, this is a big thing that we love here. We open up our doors and we see literally tens of thousands of people come through. I think it was not quite 10, maybe 7,000 this last, what was it? 7,000 this last Supercrawl. So what do you guys see as the significance of Supercrawl for engagement with the community?
A positive gathering place for anybody who wants to soak up art. I mean, Tim Potachuk is a really bright guy. He knows that, he's figured out the dollars and the cents, which has to be done. But what he's created from that has been an annual community, and the city needs that. And we can't expect, politicians to ignite that kind of thing. It's really up. And Tim is an artist himself, so it really is up to artists to make these things happen. There's a guy years ago who used to manage me, in fact. His name was Bill Powell.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, and he booked me for a week at the African Lion Safari. So, please do not think I did not pay my dues. Way before the phrase that art is the new steel was coined in this neighborhood, he actually believed in art, and he opened up a coffee house, and I saw some of the greatest songwriters in Canada. I saw Stan Rogers and Willie P. Bennett and David Whiffen in a living room, and he took that and he moved it to Gage Park and turned it into the Festival of Friends. And then he had Aquafest. He had several festivals going on. And he engaged the community in art when nobody else was doing it. And nobody saw any merit in it, and nobody saw any money in it. All people saw were really a bunch of dirty hippies. You know what I mean? And he saw beyond that, and he saw how the community as a whole can be engaged. And the Festival of Friends, I mean, I don't know, I haven't been to it in years, but it really changed the city, if we remember it. Back in 1976 was the first one, yeah. That was a long answer. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, that's fine. We were talking about.
Well, it does
Festival.
speak to the fact that a lot of this, like the kind of thing that happens, is driven by one person. Like it's often a single vision of someone like Bill Powell or Tim that drives these things and keeps them going, which is kind of astonishing when you think, how much goes into it. You think there's got to be a whole big operation, and there is, but really it's a singular vision taking place. I used to go to the crawl, the Friday crawl and the super crawl more often than I do now.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that's come along with it is all those changes on James Street, right?
Yeah.
Where the artists used to live.
That's right.
But they don't anymore. because they can't afford it. Because other people come in. It's always the artists that are in there,
That's right.
and they take up the cheap places,
That's right.
and then they make it something, and then the people with the money come in there
That's right.
and move them away. I mean, when the NDP was in power, how long ago was that, my friends? Then they were going to take Barton Street, and they were going to change the provincial law so that artists could live and work in the same place.
Wow.
And then they were trying to redevelop Barton Street into an artist.
Bill was involved in that too.
And Bill
yeah.
was involved
yeah.
in that too. Never really materialized, but that seemed like a good idea at that time. And Supercrawl, or the crawl, seems in some ways a second cousin to that to that effort. I mean, it's brilliant in a lot of ways. It's great.
Yeah.
I had lots of, and the nice thing about walking down the street, it's like Lock Street when they have the Lock Street Festival.
Yes.
You meet so many people you know
Yes.
that are doing exactly the same thing. You know,
Community.
community. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I fell in love with the city of Hamilton at a super crawl. And,
Right, yeah.
and I was just so enamored by this place and thinking, what is this place where there are so many artists and so many musicians and people like all over the place and just, you know, buying art, selling art, showing their art, performing. And I just was like, I want to be here. I have to be here. I've never seen anything like this. I grew up in small town Ontario. We don't have that stuff. And I hadn't really felt like I fit in my hometown. So it was really life-changing for me. Sorry. And just seeing like those people, like that community has sort of become like a family to me as well. And so it just, like, I love like how the grassroots way and how the art crawl started and how it grew into super crawl and how it still connects people and brings us all together.
I love that too. I think my favorite thing about the monthly art crawl is the kind of no rulesness about
Yeah.
it. Like you just kind of roll up and put your stuff up, and I'm like, that's just so cool.
And everybody knows it. Like
Yeah.
like everybody knows the unspoken rules.
Yeah.
Like I remember a few years ago, somebody had the audacity to post in like a Facebook group to be like, oh, he can apply to be at the art crawl, and everybody was like, no, we nipped that in the bud very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You don't apply. You
you're
show
there.
up.
You show up.
You set up a table.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. So thank you. And the person who asked that question actually is someone who tends to perform here at the Cathedral during Super
Oh,
Bowl.
great.
Oh.
Okay,
So,
right.
so thank you so much for that question. Another question. Anybody here in this audience have a question? You got wonderful people. Oh, Roseanne has a question, but she has no voice.
Oh, great.
So give it a try. Everybody listen. Let's get it ready to go there. Thank you, Tim. Breaking the mic. It's kind of hard.
Does a whisper come through?
Yes.
Yes.
It does. John, I've read your book, as you know, your chapbook on homelessness.
Right.
And I wonder, and you and I had quite a conversation about it. I found it so inspiring that someone wanted to write about it. And I wondered if you'd had reactions from other people.
Good question. Because surprisingly few, to tell you the truth. The book's been selling. The chapbook has been selling. I've had a few comments here and there, but other than the conversation with you and the kind words that Tom said now, there hasn't been a lot, you know? So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. You know, this always, I mean, yeah.
I encourage everybody to pick up a copy. Can you get it at Last Supper still?
He may have copies there, yeah. We're doing a second run of a few, like 60 more, but he might, at Last Supper
Last
Books,
Supper
he may have
Books,
some.
if it's up the street
And
here
then
on James.
Dave
Nice.
Kirk has them at King West Books as
And
well.
King West Books.
Yeah.
It's only $10.
You know, I learned long ago to not take it personally when there isn't a lot of reaction. Because with something like this, often the response is almost underground. It's doing work, you know. What I've written is actually doing work out there, but I don't necessarily get reports back except occasionally here and there, which is, I mean, I've learned to live on that, and it is sufficient.
And you don't know actually what's going on in people's hearts, right? That if they read your work, like you don't know what's the internal change that's going on, right?
No, exactly, yeah.
Wonderful question from the chat. If you were 6 years old again, but know all you know now, what would you say to your art teachers and English teachers to inspire young pupils?
Leave us alone.
Yeah.
We are all, I mean, I thought that I came up with this brilliant thought, but then I read that Picasso also said it, so I'm clearly not brilliant. But we're all born artists. We're all born artists because at the ages from, let's just say my grandkids, my youngest grandkids, I have 4. My youngest are both under 2. But from the ages of around 2 to 4, we all make up songs freely, and we act out, and we tell story. We write down stories, and we paint with absolutely no inhibition. And then when we go to school, and I won't say the word I say in the movie because I say a lot of F words usually, and I'm trying not to for our Lord, for the sake of our Lord and Savior tonight. But we get screwed as soon as we walk through the doors of school. Not to condemn education, my wife is a teacher, but to say that once you start putting rules on people, once you start having applications to sell art on the street, once you start bothering artists, then you've ruined it all. Then it's like creating art and working to be an artist and exposing art is about total freedom. And I can't speak for the 3 of us, but I will anyways. The 3 of us are working for that freedom. We want to attain that freedom, and hopefully by the time they are throwing dirt on us, we'll have made it there. That's it.
I love it. Other comments?
What was the question again?
It's if you were 6, if you were 6, what would, and you know it now, what would you tell your teachers?
6 is so far pre-conscious that I can't even go there anymore. I was thinking high school, because what I remember from high school when I started writing is that it was really unhelpful to have teachers criticize.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned to take that and get a strength from it, say, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. But I think maybe when you're an adult and you're a teacher, the impulse to criticize, to try to correct, to try to guide is so great that you can't just let that thing be, and just encourage the person who's doing it to do this and then do another one and continue on the path. There's always got to be some darn kind of criticism, which is why.
Criticism comes from comparison to something else, and it comes from rules about how you are supposed to be doing it. And I think we've all made it to a point in our lives, and we're all different ages, that we're so aware of that we're not really letting anyone tell us what to do. I have a book editor, and I allow him to put together the mess that I've handed him, and I trust him. But those are the kind of people that you want on your side.
Yeah. How about you, Jesse?
Editors are different.
Different. God bless them.
Kind of necessary.
Well, 6 years old was around the age that I started taking piano lessons, and I do remember this vividly. Like I was a young kid, and the reason I wanted to learn how to play the piano, I wanted it. My parents didn't put me in it. I wasn't forced to be there. I begged my parents for a piano at the house because there was a piano at my grandmother's house, and my cousin could play, and my aunt is an organist, and so there was always a lot of music, and there was always this perplexity in my mind of well, they're hitting the keys and it sounds good, and I hit the keys and it sounds bad. What gives? And so then, and I remember one day my mom picked me up from lunch for school, and my mom, I got in the car, my sister was in the car, and my mom said, "We have a surprise for you when you get home." And then my 4-year-old sister said, "When you get in the door, you have to say, 'Wow, it's a piano.'" I think, and then I only wanted my grandma to be my piano teacher. I didn't want another piano teacher, except my grandmother's not a pianist at all. So she taught me where middle C is, and that is where her knowledge ended. But then I met my piano teacher, and he taught me everything I know. I only ever had one piano teacher, and he passed away a few years ago, so I will never have another piano teacher. I have no desire. I only ever had one, and when you have perfection, I think what I would just say to him is thank you. And the other thing is that, like, you know, a lot of times there'd be like, oh, you know, you're not at this ability yet, or you aren't good enough yet, you can't learn that yet, you can't do that yet, you have to practice more, you have to learn more. He was never like that. If I wanted to learn something, he'd be like, well, okay, let's learn it.
Wow. So really
Good.
encouraging soul.
Yeah, he was.
So I think the answer is leave the kids alone, encourage them.
Hey, teacher, leave those kids
I
alone.
thought that same thing, exactly.
My dad loved Pink Floyd. So I grew up on a healthy diet of prog rock.
Well, any other questions? Turn your own mic on.
No?
You're
Yes,
on
we
now.
are. Yeah. Mon, when you were responding before to Jessie and you described her photos as an act of beauty, I wondered whether you might have said act of protest. That's what came to my mind, that they're both an act of beauty and in many ways for me an act of protest.
Yeah.
And Tom and John and Jessie, I think in this day and age, the church is being called to kind of speak more into the public sphere, to speak up for those that can't speak for themselves. And so I would call that kind of a prophetic voice. And I think one of the things that really inspires me about each of you is that I see you as prophets in many ways yourselves. And particularly kind of with the courage to speak truth to power. And to give a voice for those who may not have a voice. And I'm going to have to head off in just a minute to pick up a daughter from a sports practice, but I just wondered whether you see yourselves in that way at all, whether you see your art as kind of a medium for speaking truth to power.
And you can leave the mic on.
I don't think I've ever thought of it like that, and I don't like to think of myself in that way. I feel like it makes me feel like I'm very arrogant if I were to think of myself that way. But I also do see it as just work, and necessary work, and important work, and especially, like, you know, we always say, you know, like, the world is crazy and, like, there's all this stuff happening, but the world is really, really crazy right now, and there are some crazy things happening, and a lot of us have every reason to need to be courageous now more than ever, because of what's happening in the world right now and the unspeakable things that are on our doorstep. So I think we all need to do it because it's necessary, and that silence means that people die. And I wish I could make it, I could not say that word, but that is the truth of the situation that we all find ourselves in as a collective humanity right now.
Thank you.
Good.
I don't know if it changes anything to speak truth to power, you know? But I think in some ways I've been doing it all along, because when you're talking about the landscape of Hamilton, Ontario, yeah, it's you can't help but mourn, even as you're reveling in the beauty that's still there, and the beauty that you could imagine was here originally, you know. So you're holding those two things at the same time. So you're always hopefully talking about the truth of the place or a situation, and those in power are usually not for that kind of activity. So whether it would actually speak to them, yeah, that's not even one's business, being the person who writes it. I got to think of the Dylan movie that came out, the one that I always forget the title of.
A Complete Unknown.
A Complete Unknown, yes, that one.
Way to
where
go.
he's a folk singer writing these astonishing protest songs. Like, you can see why people wanted him to continue doing that, because they were mind-blowing. But he was also put in the position, like Jesse was talking about, where, that's a big burden to place on an individual, to be a spokesperson. And maybe if you're Pete Seeger, you can carry it off, but not if you're the kind of artist that Bob Dylan was. So, in my case, some of my work will be along that line, and then other work won't. And when it does go in that line, when it does go in the speaking truth to power or whatever, or just describing the situation, then you hope that it goes out and does reach people, does reach those people.
Well, it's interesting, like just describing the situation is a way of speaking the truth to people who may not see it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Tom?
Oh.
Your prophet?
I can only speak personally, and I try not to create things with anger. I try to inspire love and acceptance. We're all sharing. Every one of us are sharing the same fear right now. So if we create something that opens up the door of possibilities that we can all walk through towards love and towards positive engagement and towards acceptance of one another, then that's the greatest thing that we can do as artists. That job to me can't be done with anger. It can't be done, this world needs bands like Rage Against the Machine. I'm just not.
Yeah.
I never got asked to join that band, so you know what I mean. So, way to go, being angry and making that happen. And you made a point, but that's just not where I'm at.
Yeah. Thank you. It's important, right? Because passion has lots of different fuel, right? Passion can be fueled by righteous anger. It can be fueled by desperate desire to connect, desperate desire to see, have people see what's actually happening. There's lots of things that can fuel that passion. But you're right, we don't want to tip into destruction. Yeah.
Well, it's true. You don't get up there and exude anger. You get up there and give the word of God in the most positive way that you possibly can in that moment. So, you're an artist.
Thank you. Thank you. I try. No, I have an artistic background myself, so I do feel that this role is a deeply artistic role.
Mm-hmm. Good. It's great.
Very, very inspiring to me personally. Thank you. Any final questions? Yes. Go ahead. Go to the microphone so that you can be heard on the live stream as well. Thank you.
Well, what does Hamilton mean to you? To you all? How do you interpret it? Like, what is your connection? How do you feel at home in this place? And just what does it mean? Thank you.
Thank you. What does Hamilton mean to you? Simple question.
Simple question. Yes. Everything and nothing. How's that? This is where I live and have lived for more than, I don't even know. I haven't counted how many years. And I see it from all different angles. I don't really want to be any other place. There's something about this particular landscape that's got a hold on me, and something about, I wish I knew more. I wish You know, remember the H.G. Wells, the movie they made of Time Machine? I want to be in that movie and then go back to like 1789 so I could be here right when settlement started, you know, and just, I want to see how it all happened, you know, and then where it started to go wrong, then I would like to correct it, you know, so that, because I guess that's still my major grief or beef with how we've settled on this landscape. And so, but I'm still totally loyal to it, you know, that's the thing that gets me about you know, we all have our cottages up north, and we go up north to get nature because we've spoiled the nature here. And part of me thinks that the nature that's here, as damaged as it is, still has more to tell us in some ways than an undamaged landscape, both about itself and about our relationship with it. So, you know, I'll stay here. I'll continue living here as long as I can.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's like riding on the back of a wild dog, a rabid wild dog
Rabid wild dog.
that's getting shot with arrows and drinks out of dirty water. But we're not getting off, you know, and I can actually, that's how I feel, and I feel like I've enjoyed the ride. I wouldn't want to be on any other nice groomed show dog, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of nice being the armpit of Canada, don't you think?
I love it.
I'd say it's good.
Yeah.
I've just been writing about that.
Yeah, like like when I moved here, I just like, I wanted to learn all the secrets of the city. I wanted to go through every single door and every alleyway and meet all the people and dive as deep into this city as I possibly could. And I have, and I still am, and I'm always uncovering more secrets and learning new things. And I love bringing people here and showing them my home, and it really does feel like home, and it does feel like this community is where I am meant to be and where I belong, and I never found that in where I grew up. I simply did not find that in that community, but I did find it here, and I found that, you know, people are honest, and they are hardworking, and they're like, this community is so far from perfect, but it is our community, damn it, and we will fight for it, and we will stand for it, and we will defend it, and you know, it may be the armpit of Ontario, but it's our armpit of Ontario.
You're like that old joke, woman comes home and finds her best friend in bed with her husband,
Yeah.
and says, Flo, I have to, but you.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm going to hand it over to Carrie, so thank you, you guys.
Hopefully, yes, it works. Well, first of all, on behalf of Christchurch Cathedral and Tim Dobin, our dean and rector that had to leave, I want to extend my sincere thanks for being here. I think you exceeded all expectations. Each of you are a gift, and you are prophets. I have learned so much, and I'm so appreciative of what you give to this community. Maybe an armpit, but people are jealous. I remember working, and I was more in social services, and people would often say, it's amazing what goes on in Hamilton. It's a big city, but it's a small town.
Yes.
And what each of you do make it that small town feeling with your connections, your artistry, giving back to the community. I have learned so much more. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Jesse and John over the last few years. I didn't know Tom personally. I know of him, of course. I think the whole world knows of him. But thank you. And each of you brought something here when you're talking about 60 Swoop. What are the issues we're dealing with right now with reconciliation? And you know, it goes back to your comments about colonialism back in the 1700s. What created all of this? And you see the homelessness and bring this out. And Jesse, you know, your powerful words and photographs about basic income and what it means. So, you know, you both showed that desire and passion for our community through this presentation today and your questions. Monica, amazing presentation, moderating. You brought.
Tom's got to run.
I got to go pee.
Oh dear.
Okay.
Thanks. I'd like to thank Turner at the back for doing moderating.
And the live stream, thank you.
I do have to thank the community engagement team, especially Roseanne, who was in charge of our treats, and Joan and Inez and her husband for their help, and Tom, who is here as a greeter, and Michael. And I want to thank everybody for braving the storm that came today, and for the people online, amazing. So drive home safe. I hope it's not that bad. Again, one of the things I'll encourage everybody now, please vote.
Yes.
We have an election, if you didn't realize, going on. Voting is February 27th. Really think about what you heard today and the platforms that are out there. And in the words of Tom, yeah, it is about love. Love your neighbor, support your neighbor. And there is so much need out there. So think about that at the polls. So that's it. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody's welcome to more coffee and treats. Roseanne baked for a ton. Yeah.